about addiction and how it is a progressive disease, which means that it gets worse, never better. I have many examples of this in my life, and I want to share them with you guys today. So if you guys have lived in Yakima, you've probably heard of First Street, or you've been down First Street, and you know that it has a lot of drug use. It includes homeless people and poverty. And I was there. I was there 2 years ago. Um, but it wasn't just like I used drugs and all of a sudden I was there. It was definitely a progression that started off for me at the age of 14 using marijuana. Um, I began to use marijuana at the age of 14, like I said, and it just became more and more of a need in my life. I began to skip school. I began to sneak out all the time. And by the age of 16, I was a chronic runaway. I'd already been suspended from school for skipping and for smoking weed in the bathroom. And my parents had just had enough. They ended up sending me to Oregon to hopefully this would be my clean slate and this would be a new start for me. And I was excited. I was hoping the same thing. I was hoping that I would be able to leave my whole drug life behind and have a new slate in Oregon. When I got there, things were going good, and I had a job. I worked at the local movie theater. I actually watched Frozen 3 times when I worked there. I was getting straight A's in my online school, but then I got a craving. I have not built up any, at this point, I had not built up any defense over my cravings. I had not gained any accountability. I had not told anybody, and that craving turned into seeking. And I started searching for drugs, and let's be honest, spotting out a stoner is not the hardest thing. So that's what I did. And my patterns began to come back up. I started ignoring phone calls, staying out late, and just creating the same chaos that I had back in Yakima. So my uncle and aunt said that, okay, we can't do this anymore, and it was time to go back to Yakima. So by the time I got back to Yakima, my parents were already like, okay, we obviously can't control you. So they just kind of let me go. And so here I am, 17, and I'm like, man, this weed isn't doing it. So I get this bright idea, try something else. And a week later, after being in Yakima, I am trying meth for the first time. And as you can see, this progression and progression, it's getting worse. Now I'm using harder drugs. I still haven't gained any accountability. I'm not doing anything to better myself. And so now I'm on meth. And at the age of 18, I am full-blown drug addiction, full-blown meth addiction. That's all I do. And I find out at 7 months that I'm pregnant, and I'm able to stop cold turkey. I am able to stop cold turkey, but I still don't gain any accountability. I kind of just like, okay, this is again another clean slate, and I think, okay, I could do this without any help. And so I go for it. I'm clean for the rest of the pregnancy, and even 3 months after my son was born, but then I get that craving again. And now the floor that was supposed to be for my son to play on and roll around on for the first time is the same floor that the drug mouth is getting dropped on. My house becomes the drug house, people in and out all the hours of the night, and it just keeps getting worse. Eventually I get evicted. Now I'm pregnant again, and this time not so motivated to quit anything. I did quit meth, but I started something else, and after 2 weeks of my daughter being born, I'm right back on meth, and it just keeps getting worse. I get threatened to get CPS called on me, and so my parents kind of step in, and then finally my dad just kind of tells me, you can go. You don't have to be here. And that was like, okay. I left my kids. I left my kids to be raised by my parents, and all for this drug. It didn't make sense, but it's what was happening. So now I'm finally on the streets. 3 months is how long I was there. During this time, I didn't talk to my kids at all. I didn't want to see my kids. During this time, I dumpster dived. During this time, I slept in a dumpster. During this time, I stole. During this time, I got in screaming matches on First Street. During this time, I only had transportation by a bike. And it wasn't a good time. Also, I was in a very physical, abusive relationship. And finally, one night, I was like, I prayed. I let out a prayer and I was like, man, if you don't want me here, God, you got to show me. And after that, things started to change. Um, things started to look up. I started to see the truth. I started to say the truth. And I finally accepted that I needed help. I needed treatment. And I don't think if it wasn't for his grace and for me reaching out and saying I need help, that I would have been where I am today. So I went to Triumph Treatment Center to do an assessment, and they they what they do there is they see what stage you are at in your addiction and stuff like that. And I was there for 4 hours. See, I had not been honest for years and years, and so finally I was letting it all out. I was being honest. I was gaining accountability by doing this. I was asking for help, and the chains were broken. I feel like on this day, lots of chains were broken. And then I went to treatment probably 2 weeks later, and my life has not been the same since then. Um, as I began to learn about the addiction, I began to see that it is a disease and that I need help and I need to work on it. And it's deeper than just I'm leaving my kids. I don't like my kids and I'd rather use drugs. It's a lot deeper than that. And I just gained so much accountability and I gained a new life. And definitely want to thank God for that and thank the help of everybody that has been in this journey with me. And it definitely began when I reached out for help. And so, if I can encourage anybody today, if you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, reach out to them.